Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Gholdengo EX heading into the World Championships. This archetype certainly has gained a lot from the Black Bolt and White Flare expansion and has really been picking up in popularity in the online scene and has got a whole heap of results behind it as well. It certainly seems to be climbing that tier list with increased consistency and even better maneuverability than before, so it's certainly an archetype on many players' radar. Let's go over the overview then, starting off with the general strategy of this deck. We'll also jump into a quick skeleton deck list of what you have to have in all of your Gholdengo lists. We'll look at some of the event history and online matchup data. Then we can discuss filling those final few slots in your deck and which ones I think are the best. Then we're also going to take a look at a couple of example deck lists here and also end on the matchups, tips and tricks. So let's get into the general strategy of Gholdengo. And really it's a more the merrier approach with Gholdengo EX thanks to its coin bonus ability. Once during your turn you may draw one card, however if this is in the active you get to draw 2 cards for free. And this isn't limited to just one Gholdengo EX, so the more you get into play, the more draw power you have, and that's really when this deck starts to gain its advantage, because we can try and amass really large hand sizes with the deck, and it also means that we naturally are quite resilient to hand disruption, provided we have our Gholdengo EX online, not just the one we're attacking with, but also the ones in the back, helping us draw cards throughout the game, but also getting us straight into that mix. Make It Rain is the attack that we're building entirely around here. For just 1 metal energy, we do 50 times the number of basic energy that you discard from your hand. So we have the Energy Search Pro A-Spec to filter out a ton of different types of energy, all from 1 item card. And then, once we've filtered those energies out and used the Make It Rain to discard them, we're looking to use the Superior Energy Retrieval, sometimes the Night Stretcher, sometimes Levincia, the Stadium card as well, so we can chain these Make It Rains back to back to back. One of the big selling points of Gholdengo EX is that it is a one-hit KO deck in the format, meaning that you have to worry far less about Monkey Dory shenanigans from opponents, and some of these chunky stage 2s that love to sit around on the board are going to be knocked out immediately. Genesect EX is an incredible new basic the deck has access to, thanks to the Metallic Signal. Once during a turn you can search your deck for up to 2 Evolution Metal Pokemon, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Which means now, just from 1 Nest Ball, we can immediately get double Gholdengo EX and evolve straight into them and get those bonuses online. So really, we've been able to streamline the deck to have maximum counts of early game ball search, 4 Buddy Buddy Poffin, 4 Nest Ball, and gain access to not only our basics, but also Genesect then backdoors us into Gholdengo, which naturally thins our deck for us, improving our coin bonuses, and gives us great reliability of getting multiple Gholdengo very early on in the game, which allows us just to start churning through that deck really, really rapidly. Because, of course, you can use it again the following turn on Genesect, and again if you need to as well. So you can constantly refresh these cards. There's no fear of INO either, because you can simply signal again on the next turn. It's a fantastic Pokemon to have in the deck. You don't really have to read the Protect Charge attack unless we're being worried by a Maractus trying to trap us. Bear in mind, Genesect does have the grass resistance similar to Gholdengo. So in theory, you can attack with this if you have to, and you do play enough metal energy to get that done. But really, it's all about the ability here. The early game of Gholdengo is always quite similar, where Arven is trying to get us access to those early Poffins or Nest Balls, in addition to an Air Balloon, so we can pivot around our board, getting into our Gholdengo, or simply getting out of our multi-prizes if we start them. And throughout the game, we're happy to see Air Balloons because we can move between our coin bonus as well, making sure we're getting the maximum amount of cards each turn. And of course, Arven is also great for cherry picking either our A-Spec or those superiors throughout the game as well. It really is an all-star supporter card in this list. Let's take a look at a 50-card skeleton list then of Gholdengo, and you'll notice that there's only 2 gimme. That's because we're going to discuss the other options in a moment, so don't worry, it's actually going to be a 52-card skeleton here with just 8 spots to fill out the rest. But ultimately, you're going to have that 4/4 count of Gholdengo, it's your main attacker and draw engine here. Couple copies of Genesect, it's too important to prize, so you've got to have that second copy, and 1 copy of Serendipity to give us that extra draw potential. You'll notice our supporter count is much lower than traditional decks, but that's because we have the draw power from the Gholdengo the entire time, meaning that both Arven and Cypher Maniac's code breaking will be cherry picking crucial cards throughout the game. Of course, Cypher Maniac is going to stack 2 to the top, then Gholdengo can initially just like grab those cards straight back as soon as you put them to the top of your deck, so it's a perfect way to access those. A fairly high count of Boss's Orders is becoming much more common with the deck. It means that we can get around Jellicent EX, which is a new threat from the Black Bolt White Flare expansion, but just in general, because you have so much more draw power, much more frequent access to multiple Gholdengo, it means we can more reliably string together Boss's Orders alongside Superiors during the game, which is a real big boast of this new build of Gholdengo. And then lower counts of Professor Turo's Scenario and Iono. These are minimum counts here. Turo's a great card to use against decks that like to set up damage, like Dragapult, like Gardevoir, like Grimmsnarl. Removing some damage from play is always a big deal. This also provides a means around Maractus Trap as well. So actually you can see more often 2 counts in the deck. And then Iono is providing some hand disruption. Gholdengo not really known for that disruption, but it is possible within the deck list. And we are also playing Countercatcher, so in some specific scenarios we can try and construct Countercatcher, Iono, KO Pheasantipity turns, and cross our fingers that we've made it difficult for our opponent to close the game. Maximum counts of our Ball Search, maximum counts of Superior. We also have a backup to ESP, which is the Earthen Vessel one-of in the deck, to give us a little bit more reach for our energy cards. A couple of copies of Night Stretcher can reload those Gholdengo in case we prized any pieces, can recover Pheasantipity, and of course is always going to be an extra 50 damage when you need it. And those air balloons are critical for moving between our Pokemon, Gholdengo preferably, but additionally any other basics that make their way into the deck that we have to move out the way so we can start making it rain. And thanks to the A-Spec Energy Search Pro, you're going to play 1 copy of every type of basic energy in addition to the elevated count of metal, but there are some reasons to play more than 1 copy of lots of these different energy cards, and we'll get into those in greater detail in a moment. First, let's get into a minor debate around which Gimmighoul you should be playing. Now, let's get one thing straight. Minor Errand Running is definitely the best. There's no question about that. But now that we have 4 Arven, 3 Air Balloon in a number of our lists, we actually have a reason to think about the Call for Family Gimmighoul. It does have 50 hit points, which is a real problem, but it does have a great attack here, which allows us to search our deck for a basic and put it onto the bench. This could be a great panic play that we can at least get into games. Ultimately, though, I feel like if you're using, or like if you just have access to Air Balloon anyway, it's often come from the fact that you've grabbed Arven, and Arven can grab Nestball or Poffin at the same instance, and you're still ending up in a similar scenario. I think all this card really does is it lets you go Call for Family from double Poffin, and then you call out the Genesect, so you kind of get from one Arven the best of both worlds. I think that's kind of the biggest upside here, but it does force you to put a Genesect EX down, which then can be targeted from opponents, so it does give you a fallback play. It means you need less from certain hands to get into games, but I do think there is a genuine drawback with so much TM devolution in the format, and the fact that we oftentimes look to use Professor Turo into these evolving archetypes. It then means you have to sometimes not put down this low hit point Gimmighoul, and that ultimately hinders your draw potential during the game. So this is a close one, actually. I do like the fact that it just lets you play more games, but I am certainly concerned by the context of the format. That means in some instances, if you don't get it down quickly enough, you're going to be denying yourself a coin bonus, and that's a terrifying idea. The other tech Gimmighoul that I've seen is the continuous coin toss, allowing you to flip until you get tails, and it's 20 for each heads. This is a kind of funky card in that it allows you to start pressurizing damage without putting any multi-prizer into play. So in theory, you can keep yourself at this 1 prize board and maybe from enough coin tosses, if your opponent is also hesitant to put down any multi-prizers, you can flip enough heads to actually start taking a KO. I do think this one is really questionable, to be honest. I think we already have Strike It Rich Gholdengo and Scizor in the deck that we'll talk about later. I think in most instances, I'd rather be using Minor Errand Running here. Next up, let's talk about the energy with the best synergies that we have here. It looks like either Psychic, Lightning, or Darkness energy will be the counts that you choose to bolster based on what other tech inclusions you want within your list. Moonlit Hill can discard a Psychic Energy from hand in order to heal 30 from each of your Pokemon. This can be devastating up against Dragapult, Gardevoir, and Grimmsnarl builds, and these are all really high tier matchups. The Moonlit Hill is similar to a Picnic Basket, which is just a 1-card inclusion, but at the same breath, this also is allowing you to bounce stadiums, and there's a real reason for Gholdengo to now want stadium bounces, because Jamming Tower is a really frustrating stadium when we lean so heavily into our own air balloons. So by going second Psychic plus Moonlit Hill, now you have a nice Jamming Tower bounce whilst also giving yourself some heal into a lot of popular decks and giving you a safeguard against TM devolution. Levincia is kind of the most aggressive of the bunch, where once during each player's turn, that player can put up to 2 basic lightning from their discard pile into your hand. This can essentially give you even more Iono proofing into the late game, where you can bank a couple lightning in the bin after a Make It Rain, knowing that can instantly get you back a couple energy, and oftentimes after that you're just one superior away from reaching a big KO. It's very easy to play, again, one stadium just so that you have a bounce and then an extra copy of lightning, but you can go further with a deck if you want to with a second copy of Levincia and 3 lightning, and it just means that whenever you see this stadium you know it's 100 damage that you can bank in play, so you're very rarely whiffing those KOs, even when you're struck to low hand sizes and a couple of your Gholdengo have been dealt with. If you really want to go out there, Revavroom is an interesting stage 1 Pokemon that does have synergy here, where you can use Levincia at the start of your turn, then Rumble with your Revavroom and get yourself topped up on cards before you start using those coin bonuses and Genesect and whatnot to filter out and draw more of the deck, so that you really are nicely secured against hand disruption. Revavroom hasn't really seen much play in Gholdengo in the past, but now we do have Air Balloon that can allow you to retreat with it, and Genesect that can search out the stage 1 more reliably. So if you are going down the Levincia route, I could see it coming into the deck. Although at that point we're committing basically all of our extra 8 slots just to this Revavroom package. And then finally, Darkness Energy with Monkey Dory. You can still just play 1 Dark and 1 Monkey, and then just tell yourself that if you prize it, you have a bit of a headache. But as we know, Monkey Dory is also a great way to offset some math. Dragapult players, Gardevoir players, Grimmsnarl, I'm still mentioning the same ones over and over again. But essentially in any matchup that doesn't one-hit KO the Gholdengo, you can use the Monkey Dory to set up potential bigger threats later down the line. If you have plenty of reach on the current turn you're in to take a knockout on the active, you can use Monkey Dory to set up math to make it easier for you on a future turn, and at the same time provide that little bit of healing. The one tiny note I'll make is that Team Rocket's Venture Bomb has become far less popular in lists of Gholdengo as of late, but that has sometimes been in the list if you are fearful of Pikachu EX. Now, Joltik Box is far less popular right now, and I expect it to be less than 5% heading into the World Championships in terms of play rates. But I did just want to give it a quick nod because Monkey Dory means that there's no downside to the Venture Bomb in your list if you really want to have it. And ultimately, the difference between 2 damage and 5 damage from an energy card is not that much. So Venture Bomb looks kind of copium, but it would make the Joltik Box matchup far, far easier. Now that we've talked about the different energy synergies, let's talk about the other ways we can fill those slots. First of all, a couple single prize attacking options. A 1-1 Sizzle line, similar to how I mentioned with Revavroom, is a lot better in the deck now because Genesect EX can freely search the Sizzle when you need it. Punishing Scissors does do quite a good amount in the format right now with the Area 0 builds of Raging Bolt. It also gives you an option into Flareon, which is one of your tougher matchups. And even against the likes of Dragapult and Grimmsnarl and whatnot, they have so many natural abilities floating around that this is a great way that you can force your opponent into this awkward spot. 140 hit points isn't easy for them to deal with, forces a full attack often, and it basically just establishes another threat that your opponent doesn't really want to go through if it can help it. The Strike It Rich Gholdengo is far less helpful in that regard, in that it can't really do much outside of just dealing with a single prize Pokemon, but sometimes that's good enough. It can help you in the Crustle matchup, it can also help you against the Mimikyu, and it's actually a decent mirror card just because it can allow you to initiate the race with a single prize Pokemon. The Sizzle's funny in that actually it takes 2 Metal Energy to use the Cut attack, whereas Strike It Rich is just 1 Metal Energy to get the job done, because I have to assume that in the mirror your opponent isn't flooding their board with the multi-prizes. If they do that, then you can be the first one to take a 2-prize KO and it's going to be easy from there. So the Strike It Rich is slightly easier to attack with than the Sizzle, and evolves from your primary stage 1 anyway, so your opponent can't see it coming a mile off. Additionally, with more copies of Professor Toro becoming standard in Gholdengo, the fact that you can pick this Pokemon back up to reuse Strike It Rich is also something to bear in mind. Then for some additional basic Pokemon, because we're really quite skimpy on the skeleton list with just, 7 basics in there right now, it definitely feels like we could add some. If nothing else, it means that we can be less vulnerable to early game Fan Rotom prizes from some Noctowl decks. It also just gives us higher odds of not starting Genesect or Pheasantipity, which is actually a real headache in a lot of matchups. So not only do all of these Pokemon individually have good abilities and upsides, but naturally you're improving your ratios of starting a chunkier single prize basic. That said, Shaman can give you some great protection against Bench Snipe, so every now and then if you do face that Ogre's Mask deck that's running around or a Terra Box, you can protect yourself against Wellspring. You're also making life even more difficult for Grimmsnarl to set up a Devo play. You're also making it harder for Baby Bolt and Screamtail to do their stuff as well, so there are some upsides for this basic.
I think Iron Bundle's a really good one, just having that Hyper Blower option. Because you have the quad nest ball now, it just gives you such high odds of pushing single prizes out the way. Ace Nullifier is a great basic in the format right now. It can improve your mirror match, it can shut down Neo Upper Energy, it can shut down Secret Box if you find it quickly enough. This deck naturally gets to play 4 copies of Nest Ball as well, so you do have good access to this basic, especially when you play naturally 3 or 4 copies of a tool as well. You normally have a means of floating a tool onto this Ace Nullifier and making it awkward for your opponent. Finally, Buju, a similar nod to how we have the Call for Family Gimme Ghoul now. Because we just naturally have more access to Air Balloon, we pivot quite easily, and having a Buju is actually a really nice pivot where you can shut down rare candy from archetypes. You can really slow down some Charizards, some Dragon Dust Noirs, Gardevoir as well. You can really put the brakes on your opponents just from an early Buddy Buddy Poffin, from an Arven alongside an Air Balloon. And you never know, this can always give you backdoor win conditions as well. When we have an elevated count of boss, sometimes boss pollen can still get you back into games. If towards the end of the game your opponent used a Iono to a low hand size, and you weren't able to bonus towards those final pieces, a Panic Buju is still on the table. Quick note to Rigid Band, I actually really like this, and I think it is in all of my current builds of Gholdengo right now. Reducing the damage your stage 1 take by 30 is really handy into, again, those stage 2 matchups. I've mentioned them a bunch right now, but that's one of the core selling points of Gholdengo in my opinion. In the same breath, it also gives you a bit more copium into the Flareon matchup, which is pretty tough, of course, but forcing them to Noctowl in addition to their Crispin, their Ball Search cards and whatnot, they also now have to find their Jamming Tower. If they're playing it, because some have cut it entirely just for Gravity Mountain anyway, you do at least have a chance to force them to Carnelian so they don't have back-to-back-to-back Flareon so easily. Rigid Band is also an annoyance for Charizard players. Of course, they're very often playing Maximum Belt, so they can sometimes reach around this anyway, but it can give you a bit more reliability of your first Gholdengo sticking on the board. And then, of course, because we are an Arven deck, we have to think about a bunch of different items that could come into the list, even some one-offs that we can cherry-pick for the right instance. Picnic Basket, again, a great tech card for all these spread decks. I'm beating a drum here, but this really is how Gholdengo gains its advantage. You're allowed to play these sorts of stadium cards or item cards whilst also reaching a big KO, undoing a lot of your opponent's setup math, both on your side of the board and their own. And thanks to it being Arven searchable, it's more reliable than just having the 1 or 2 copies of Turo in your list. Tool Scrapper's an interesting one. Sure, this is a card that can be thrown out in a huge number of matchups just because lots of decks play Air Balloon, but I'm still critically thinking about the Gardevoir matchup here. Many of the Gholdengo lists right now are going all in on the healing route, but if you go too far in one direction, the Gardevoir can swing back and change its own deck list back towards a Drifloon Bravery Charm. And if you're expecting that from Gardevoir players heading into Worlds, the cat and mouse then means that you have to play Scrapper again so that you can punish the buffed up single prizes, taking 1-hit KOs on your Gholdengo. And every now and then you randomly find it in your hand when your opponent is teching against you with their own Ace Nullifier. So having Scrapper to remove that then grants you access to your own Ace spec once again. It's not always something you can time properly, but at least Arven can find one of the pieces. So if your Ace spec or the Scrapper comes to your hand, you can still unlock yourself and grab all your energy. And then finally, Poker Gear, we have a fairly low count of supporters, and we know that Arven is like gold dust in the deck. In addition, you do play some of these tech supporter cards like Iono and Professor Turo, so having extra reach for it in addition to your coin bonus allows you to find it on the crucial turn. And it's more versatile than possibly just going up to like a 4th boss's orders, for example. This is trying to be like the best of both worlds, where it's still an early game consistency card, but can give you extra reach in the mid game. Let's discuss some tournament data for Gholdengo then, and do have a massive caveat here that for the NAIC we didn't have access to the Genesect or Air Balloon, and these are big buffs for the deck. That said, Gholdengo was still fairly popular in day 2 with 18 of the regular builds, as well as 9 builds with Gholdengo and Dragapult, making it the 7th best performer if you combine the two, just between Flareon and Joltit Box. We didn't see any Gholdengo make it into the top cut though. But again, I have to stress, builds were massively inferior to how they're looking now. And we can actually get a good indication of that thanks to the Japan Championships, where there were 2 Gholdengo in the top 32 of their national event, and those 2 actually placed in 10th and 11th, meaning that they got really far into that tournament, with just a few changes required. In fact, these high-placing Gholdengo with the elevated counts of boss's orders have been taken on from players over in the West, and is now definitely the standard way to play the deck. And just look what it means in terms of the online data. Gholdengo has become the most popular individual deck online, and it's been getting a bunch of good results as well. Now, some of this will no doubt be new toy syndrome in the fact that Gholdengo is fun and quick to play online, but also you have to give it credit for being a consistent deck that gets into most games, has a very linear strategy that imposes itself onto a number of decks in the format, And genuinely, the strength of the archetype has already started to warp the metagame. We see the likes of Ethan's Typhlosion in at 7th place, we see that Flareon being ever present, and even Charizard Pidgeot now gains the new boast that they're reasonable into Gholdengo, because it does seem like the format is starting not only to gravitate around the stage 2s, but also the Gholdengo deck as well. And as we see the format gravitate, let's talk about the matchup data then. This is the Trainer Hill tournament data from the 18th of July all the way up to the 6th of August. The glaring unfavourables are pretty obvious. Typhlosion is hell for the deck, really not much chance there at all. There are single prize beat stick, which is already tough for Gholdengo, but it also happens to hit you for weakness, so it gets online very quickly. Flareon can start taking prizes quickly with Fan Rotom. It has weakness on you with the Flareon EX, of course, whilst powering up additional Pokemon, and even has a Briar play if possible as well, so will almost always sculpt a 3-attack game plan against you if they're playing correctly. And Charizard EX can be tough. Chi-Yu is an easy tech card they can include as a single prize uptrade Pokemon, and as we know, Charizard doesn't have too much trouble reaching that 260 as the game progresses, so it does often become a multi-prize slog, with Gholdengo sort of blinking first by taking the first KO with the EX in a lot of instances. Gholdengo is pretty balanced into all of the Dragapult matchups, and it's also decent into the other aggressive decks of Raging Bolt and Joltik Box. The bigger boasts for Gholdengo come in the form of the Gardevoir matchup and Grimmsnarl matchup, and we've already mentioned a few tech cards as we've gone through filling those final spaces. The Turo Scenario coming into the deck, the Picnic Basket, the Moonlit Hill, the Monkey Dory. All of these cards work to undo the damage from the Guardies and the Grims, giving them far less avenues of attack, whilst Gholdengo, of course, is churning through those multi-prize knockouts whenever they can find them. Now, I do have a couple example deck lists here, but really I could have like 5 or 6 or 7 different variations, because from the skeleton, essentially I have a small checklist that I want to go through with all of my Gholdengo builds. I want all of my Gholdengos to add one of the single prize attackers, whether it's Scizor or the Strike It Rich Gholdengo. I want all of my lists to also have a stadium, so I can bounce Jamming Tower and unlock my air balloons. I want every list to play some amount of healing, whether it's elevating that Turo count, which also helps against Maractus, or a Basket or a Moonlit Hill. There's going to be some crossover of some of these cards, and I think those remaining spots then just become additional basics to improve my odds of not starting Genesect or Fez. So that's my sort of mashup of how we should end those final few slots. Extra basic Pokemon, a bit of healing, a stadium, and a single prize attacking threat. Oh, and I have made that case for Rigid Band to be core in the deck as well right now. Expecting Charizard, expecting Flareon, and naturally being strong into the Grim, the Guardy, which are already favourable, but also the Dragapult, which is only showing even right now. So with that checklist kind of out the way, let's talk about the list in front of you then. In this instance, we've gone for the Scizor line. It means you get to play an extra basic. The bundle I really like in the deck. Again, it gives you an extra gusting effect whilst also being an extra basic in your deck. And then we're playing the Stadium Bounce of Levincia, which, again, trying to get rid of Jamming Tower, but also giving you some extra late game damage push. Never a bad thing. And in this instance, we're not playing Monkey Dory, we're just going for the Picnic Basket approach here. I think Picnic is kind of like the most powerful one card tech, because it also removes damage from the opponent's side of the board, whether it's Gardevoir or Grim. So it is like the most disruption, and it's an easy search from Arven, whereas Monkey Dory is like just healing one of your guys a little bit. It can offset a crucial turn from them, but ultimately they still have much to play with, and oftentimes requires 2 slots because you might want to go up to second Dark. Whereas the Moonlit Hill is like not as powerful as Picnic because you don't heal their side of the board, which is actually an upside when you're a one-hit KO deck anyway. And that's a harder to find stadium card, and also requires an extra psychic. Plus that's an energy that's not being used for an attack, so you also have to have more than enough damage already in the turn to even use the Moonlit effectively. With that said, here's a slightly different variation where I've cut the Scyther, which gains 1 space because you're swapping a 1-1 count to just 1 Strike It Rich. And then we've swapped the stadium around, which then swaps our healing cards around. So we got rid of Lightning Energy, Levincia plus Basket to then go Monkey Dory, Moonlit plus Psychic. And in this instance, there's also the Ace Nullified Genesect coming into the mix. I think this build should be pretty strong in the mirror. You're denying ESP from the opponent and you have Strike It Rich. And as we know, Ace Nullifier can come up in all sorts of matchups, including the Zard and the Flareon, which can both be troublesome. And actually denial of Max Belt and Crystal are quite handy, to be fair. So there you go, there's 2 builds that sort of talks about the strengths and weaknesses of different combinations, but I think that's ultimately where it has to land. Essentially that blend of extra basics, single prize attacker, stadium, and some healing. If you have that cocktail in your deck as your final few slots, I think you have a very well-rounded Gholdengo build. Now then, let's get into the matchups. Gardevoir is one of the stronger ones for you, but I think the only real cards that will give you real trouble, I think, would be Bravery Charm Drifloon. So if you're anticipating Gardevoir to tech for Dengo, you can reverse tech with the Scrapper. If you think they're going to stick with like more Devo, Monkey shenanigans, I feel like your healing cards should be handy. And then if you're worried about a Jellicent-based build, I think Levincia is actually a really good stadium card. So that even under Tool and Item Lock, you have a means of moving your Mons or still gaining damage to punch into Jellicent itself. I also think Bundle is really good against Jellicent as well, of course. And don't forget that if you're playing Picnic as your healing option, that also can nullify some of their attacking threats as well, and force them to overcommit Psychic Energy in weird situations. Future Joe in post-edit also just wants to talk about Klefki. If you're leaning too heavily into Genesect, sometimes they can just shove a Klefki against you, and then you don't have easy access. I should have mentioned Ultra Ball as a different tech card. It can help you get around Klefki pretty easily, just as a nice Arven out into your stage 1. It can also be good in that mirror match situation if you're trying to have that one prize standoff. It means you don't have to Nest Ball out Genesect to get your Dengo. Instead, you can Arven Ultra Ball, and that can get you your single prize attacker, whether it's the Scyther or the Strike It Rich. So I think Ultra Ball is actually a card I should have mentioned earlier, but I'm just shoving in now because I wanted to have a Klefki answer discussed in the video. Grimmsnarl, also a decent one. Just be aware of the threat of Freezing Shroud still ticking over. Be aware that TM Devo and Blood Moon Ursaluna are both going to try and be some of the late game options. And also, I would expect Maractus in Grimmsnarl as well. So rather than using your Turo greedily to try and heal up your board and sort of stay very safe, I think it's better to hold on to these and be more cognizant of an Iono plus Corner counter-catcher combination so they can't end up buying a bunch of turns off you for free. Dragapult is also a deck that plays Maractus, so we have to use those Turos effectively. Rigid Band can be a great way to make the Phantom Dive feel pretty terrible, but also be aware of that jamming tower as well, so keep an eye on your own stadium count. Similar situation for Dragapult Dusknoir, although they do have those Curse Blasters, so they can push their Phantom Dive out a little bit more aggressively. I think in this instance, it's better for you to be proactive with the Turos in a Dusk build, because it's far less likely they'll have the Maractus. Dragazard comes with a heap of different challenges, actually. Chiyu is becoming more and more staple in the deck, and is a real nuisance as a single prizer. I think it's not really a Pokemon that you can ignore too easily, so it's going to be a Strike at Rich or Sizzle angle during the game. Do of course be aware that Charizard can't hit you early, but will be able to reach on you in the late game. And they're definitely a stamp deck. Yes, we naturally have a lot of onboard draw power, but there can be some situations early where you would prefer to Arven for Vessel rather than ESP, so that you can bounce back from a stamp after your initial knockout. In the mirror match, this really is a game of chicken for who puts the first multi-prizer down. I feel like you both have to sort of rush towards either your Baby Dengo or your Sizzle to initiate that prize race, whilst not putting down your Genesect EX. Do bear in mind that punishing Scissors isn't always going to be active, so the cut attack might be the better route. And also a quick note to Ace Nullifier, maybe you forego these waiting for the stage 1 attacking threat if you can just go, well, I'm going to use Make It Rain, I'm going to use Ace Nullifier at the same time, and hope my opponent can't immediately get enough energy with the lack of their Ace spec. Onto Raging Bolt, this one can be tricky, of course. They have one hit KO potential straight back into you, and they're often going to be the player initiating that prize race with the Assault landing from Fan Rotom. If they don't take that single prize KO, Sizzle could be an excellent card to utilize. This is one of those matchups where you should have no real problem reaching on their Pokemon turn by turn, so you don't always need to flip the script additional cards. I think in the best case scenario, this is an Arven for counter-catcher angle, or try and accumulate enough energy plus boss's orders in the opening to punish their early single prize KO, and just start churning through their EXs, because it's very rare that a Raging Bolt can hold off from benching lots of Terrors as they progress through their opening turn. Onto the Joltik box matchup, and with the Venture Bomb now often not in Gholdengo, Pikachu has become much more of a headache. Fortunately, we can just try and boss or bundle or countercatch around this Pokemon, so keeping track of those is going to be integral. Iron Hands, of course, comes out the gate swinging, but you should almost always be able to have a response KO to the first Iron Hands. At that point, again, it's sort of a rationing situation of trying not to put Genesect or Pheasantipsy down, or be aware that you can Turo them up during the game to deny them from an easy Blood Moon late game 2 prizes after they've removed a bunch of energy from a Pikachu. Flareon, definitely a nightmare matchup. I do feel like this one is really tough. Rigid Band can at least try and deny the Burning Charge. Sizzle and Strike It Rich are both decent options here as well to take a single prize KO. And maybe that gives you a means around Briar. Again, kind of depends if they took a single prize KO with Fan Rotom in the initial instance. This one does feel very tricky. Try and find your one Iono, I suppose. I didn't really even bother making a slide for the Typhlosion matchup. This one's just pretty cursed. I do feel like they have to brick for you to have any hope. Like, sure, you can nullify a secret box, maybe. I don't know. Try your best. I hope they prize multiple Ethan and ticket. No, that's not even good. Yikes. Early lunch? And then we end on Charizard. Again, be aware of Chi-Yu, be aware of maximum belt, so they can be KOing with Burning Darkness perhaps earlier than you'd expect. Finding the avenue to deal with their Pidgeot is of course going to be massive, to try and make it more difficult for them to have the ideal late game board states. The good news is this deck is sort of slower to set up, so oftentimes you can punish the like Evo into Pidgeotto plays and deny that quite quickly with your boss or bundle. The usual sort of spiel we give against the setup based decks, Charizard being sort of the most fragile of the bunch, with Quick Search being hard to get online in the first place. That's it for Gholdengo then. I do feel like this archetype in a vacuum has got admittedly so much more powerful, but I do think there are still enough challenges in the format that make it a fairly balanced deck. It does feel like Gholdengo will no doubt have to dodge certain matchups to go far in the World Championships, but ultimately those archetypes are the sort of more difficult ones to play. Typhlosion doesn't have great data behind it, Flareon has its own challenges, it's only really Charizard's revival that becomes a big issue, and really just that Chi-Yu, how annoying that card is popping up again. I think really the only concern I have with Gholdengo is how much on the radar it is. There's no doubt that everyone's tested against it a bunch now, and it does feel like one of these archetypes that can be techful with just 1 or 2 slots, and it will take away massive percentages. Let me know what you thought down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.